Hello everyone and welcome to Corn Free Live. I'm Darren Bolton and I'll be your host for today's conversation. And today's topic is the expectation gap. Why leaders expect more than teams can sustain, and what psychological safety has to do with it. Now, I think it's fair to say we're living through a rather interesting moment at work. Leaders have always wanted organisations to move faster, do more and deliver better results. That's hardly new. What's changed is that AI has suddenly made all of that feel very possible. Work that once took days can sometimes take hours. Tasks that felt difficult now look deceptively easy. And somewhere along the way, the question quietly shifted from, can we do this, to why isn't it done already? Now, depending on your job, that's either incredibly exciting or mildly terrifying. It's also where things start to get interesting, because while technology can accelerate work, it doesn't automatically create clarity, it doesn't magically increase capacity, and it certainly doesn't make difficult conversations any easier. So today, we're exploring what happens when expectations start rising faster than people can realistically keep up with them, and what leaders can do to build high-performing teams without creating unnecessary pressure along the way. And just to be clear, this isn't a conversation about lowering the bar. It's about making sure everyone understands where the bar actually is and feels confident enough to say when they might need a different pole vault. Now, before we go any further, a quick reminder, this isn't television, it's LinkedIn Live, which means you don't have to sit there silently nodding at your screen. Get involved, please. Tell us where you're joining us from. Agree with us, disagree with us, challenge us if you think we've got it wrong. We've got a poll coming up a bit later. We'll be taking questions from the chat throughout the session, so don't save your best question until the last 30 seconds. The best live conversations are never the ones where we do all the talking, and thankfully I won't be doing all the talking either. I'm joined today by two fantastic colleagues from Corn Free. Amelia Haynes, Manager of Research and Partnership Development at the Corn Free Institute, and Juliana Turkin, Senior Principal with Corn Free's AI Division. Amelia, Juliana, come on in, welcome, where are you? Nice to see you both.
Hello, nice to see you too.
Hope you're doing well, So, as Amelia's already hinted towards, she does like my intro question, which she knows nothing about. So let's kick off. So I personally think AI has completely kind of messed with my own expectation about what's possible and how quickly I can get it done. So this doesn't have to be work related. It could be something at home or in everyday life. I'd love to hear about one moment where you thought this will only take 5 minutes and AI had other ideas. So Juliana, I'd like to go to you first. Any examples you can think of?
Yes. I had an idea and I was playing with it and I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to tell my goal and I'm going to just go with it and see where it takes me. It took me 2 months.
2 months? Crikey, that is a bit more than I thought you were going to say there.
It took me 2 months. I was prototyping something. I had something in my mind that was very specific, and I basically broke it multiple times. But yes, it usually takes me a while.
And Amelia, any ideas there?
Oh gosh, I mean, probably a highly relatable one, but I thought, I could lean on my buddy co-pilot to help me jazz up some slides that I was working on, and what I thought would be a very simple, wave of the wand, make it a little bit prettier, took 32 minutes just to process some cosmetic changes. So that was a bit of a surprise.
Well, the reason why I thought this up was because last night I had exactly the same situation. My daughter's moved into a new house and she wanted to know if certain furniture could fit into the space she's got. So I said, no problem. I'll chuck the floor plan in. I've got the measurements of the sofas, put them in, and straight away it was amazing, absolutely amazing. The only thing was one of the armchairs was around the wrong way. I asked it for 45 minutes to just rotate it by 90 degrees. And it just couldn't do it. I'd used Copilot, I tried ChatGPT. It was just painful beyond belief. So yeah, it's weird how you can do quite a lot, but there are moments you get. So anyways, I just wanted to hear your reality sort of feedback. So thank you for that. Amelia, let's start right kind of at the beginning. We keep talking about this expectation gap, but what does it actually look like inside organizations, and why has it suddenly become something leaders just can't afford to ignore?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we did an interesting study recently. It was a global survey, and we were trying to understand what's the impact of AI on the employee experience of the workplace. And what we found is that AI doesn't automatically just baseline improve employees' experience of things like autonomy, unique capability to contribute, engagement, motivation, kind of a bunch of metrics that we're interested in. What is true sorry, let me back up. It's not automatically improving it just by virtue of using it more. And a lot of leaders, a lot of organizations are just pushing this agenda of more is more, because there's an expectation that more is more and more is faster. It's more efficient. It's better. The quality is better. The pace is better. And what we found was that in the context of an AI transformation, there are things that are true about improving those dimensions that are true in many other contexts as well. So the things that actually improved those metrics that we were looking at were things like purpose alignment, role clarity, support, visible human ownership. So to your question of why is the expectation gap growing now, while AI can indeed make a lot of work faster, it doesn't necessarily make work clearer. And there's this conflation between those two things that leaves room for this widening expectation gap. So if leaders aren't considering what are the realities of navigating ambiguity, capacity, quality, judgment, if the expectations outpace things like clarity and capacity and confidence and trust, that's where we see that gap growing. And I think that's why we're seeing it especially happening right now.
That's great. That's great. And Juliana, I'm trying to be a little bit provocative here, so go with me. Has AI actually made work dramatically easier, or has it mainly made leaders think it should be easier? What's your perspective on that?
I think there's two sides to that coin, but yes, a lot of the companies that we talk to really is about, well, I'm not seeing the results that I was hoping to see, or it didn't make as easy as it should be. So there's more to that than just, oh, we have AI, our problems are solved.
Absolutely. And I guess, there is the magic wand effect, but it's understanding when and where that magic wand works. And that seems to be the lack of understanding right now, especially from leaders, I guess, and stuff. So yeah, that's interesting. Amelia, we've all had those days where everything is apparently quite urgent. Every email is urgent, every meeting's urgent, every project's urgent. At what point does working faster actually start making us work worse, I guess?
Yeah. So there's good pressure and there's bad pressure. And there's a little bit of pressure for a little bit of time, and then there's sustained pressure over time. And the brain and the body and people experience those things really differently. And so I think we have to be cognizant about what kind of pressure are we applying for how long, and what is the experience of that difference. When the brain and the body experience constant pressure or prolonged pressure or really, really intense pressure, the brain shifts into self-protection mode. It switches into just be highly efficient mode. And that can be really useful for immediate action, but it's not always good for things like judgment or slowing down or asking questions. So you start to see from this very biological basis of your brain is actually responding to the context differently. You see different behavioral outcomes. So where one typically might say, hey, that's not making sense to me, or hey, I have a question, or hey, this is actually I might have a little bit of a red flag here. When you're under that constant pressure, you might skip that step entirely and just go into this self-protective, I'm just going to deliver outputs, regardless of whether or not I truly and fully understand the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I just want to pause for a minute and make this a proper conversation. So you've all heard from us, and now we'd love to hear from you, our wonderful viewers. We've got a quick poll coming up on the screen any second now. Oh, there you go, very good. And we'd love to know where the expectation gap is showing up in your world. So is that speed of delivery? Is that the clarity on priorities? Maybe it's the capacity and workload, or is it the confidence to speak up? So all I'm asking for you, I never ask too much of you, is a simple 1, 2, 3, or 4 into the chat. That'd be perfect. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. We're just taking the kind of the temperature of the room and seeing what everyone's experiencing and stuff. So have a little look at that, get in the chat, and we will bring that back a little bit later so we can just see what the results are there and see if our guests were imagining they would be. And don't forget, our guests are here to answer some questions. So please put them in soon. We get a lot of questions that come in near the end or just after we've finished. And sometimes there can be a little delay on LinkedIn Live. So get them in as quickly as you can. Right. Thanks very much. We'll come back to the poll in a minute. So Juliana, just a thought, but I feel leaders often believe they're being crystal clear, and then they discover everyone's gone off and interpreted it 4 completely different ways. So where does that kind of disconnect come from?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to AI and this, this new way of communication, and Amelia had great points that AI doesn't necessarily make the work easier. It just has an abundance of possibilities, right? And you might sit in a meeting room and say, let's have some ideas on what could be our new priorities. And all of a sudden, without full communication, without clarity on where we're going and, where we need to be, these 10 brilliant ideas can become an absolute chaos, and everything becomes just noise, right? So I think the clarity that leader needs to give is this is the clear path, this is where we're going, and let's take out the noise. We could do 10 things all at the same time, but where should we focus on? Where should be really what we should be putting our efforts in? And then, what does good look like? It's not only, oh, let's do this because ABC, or this is how you're going to be. It's how does it, what does it look like, and what are we really willing to trade to move fast, right? Because sometimes you see AI transformations where the workload is already quite large, but you're expected to, be part of the transformation, do more work, change the way the AI is working in your workflow, and so on and so forth. So I think it's the permission, right? We have to give ourselves, and the leaders have to give the team the permission to go and experiment, to make different decisions on how their work should be looking at. What are the priorities? How are we going to get to those priorities? And what does that really look like? And I think, it sounds small, but having the ability to have that permission to experiment, make actual changes on how we're going to deliver something is crucial.
Yeah. And I guess that what good looks like is so difficult to properly understand because it's constantly changing. I mean, I'm looking at my world, and the things that were good last month are bad now. And so the interpretation of what's expected, it's hard to understand what good looks like is still good. And that is that your guess of what good is? Or is that actually got some insight into that? So is that what people are struggling with as well? What actually is good?
Well, that's right, because a lot of the work that people are doing today, a lot of how their roles are designed were designed years ago, and it doesn't necessarily fit to the new era of working with AI. So when it comes to what does good look like, let's think about what are priorities, what do we need to achieve, and work backwards from it. It sometimes means that we have to redesign the way we're working. We're doing that to ourselves internally, right? We want it to be our customer zero and going through this whole transformation so we can help our customers with it. And it's not an easy thing, but at the end of the day, it needs to be done. And the outcomes and outputs become much better when you do this in a proper way.
Sure. Now, I believe I have got a question. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think it's a really interesting point, and I love what you said about just this abundance of possibility and opportunity. That really resonates with me. And I know in our teams, we really went from everybody use AI, it's great, it's important, to then trying to create guidance around, okay, use it this way. And what we actually landed on was use it for this goal. And that transition and that kind of life cycle of just go from total expansive possibility and opportunity to really kind of purpose-driven and mission-oriented tool utilization was that in and of itself was transformative.
Yeah, I love that reframing. So we do have a question. I can see a question's popped up. So can we get on the screen for our lovely guest? Lovely Kathy. So how do you know whether you have an expectation gap or simply a performance problem? Who wants to have a stab at that first?
It's a really good question. It's a really hard question. I think the first question that I would be asking to uncover that is, does everyone know what the expectations are? Like, can you say confidently that your team is aligned and really well clear on what the expectations are. And if there is any uncertainty, then chances are there's an expectation gap. And chances are, if it was just a performance problem, there would be other signs of that might be completely unrelated to the AI transformation.
Yeah, if I may add to that really quickly as well, I think, you know, the expectation can come with anxiety as well, right? So if the expectation is not there, it's not clear, it will build the anxiety. It will build symptoms as well, in terms of, you know, people protecting their own value, protecting their own confidence and the control that they have in their own work. So how do then they start to build the resistance? It might not necessarily be, you know, an issue with performance, but is a quiet or very loud resistance, depending on what it is, just because those expectations weren't necessarily clearly. So sometimes you have to keep an eye on those as well. And I think when you get a leader that has the readiness to see that and to spot that, they can then adjust as that happens.
Yeah. Now I think we might have one more question that we can get on the screen. Oh, yeah, there you go. It's a long one. You've both vanished off the screen, so I'll read it quickly and then we can answer the question. So my experience has shown AI makes individual tasks faster, but a lot of the work that actually consumes time, coordination, judgment calls, catching what a model gets wrong, doesn't show up at a task list. How much of the expectation gap is leaders mistaking the AI-assisted part, go faster, for the whole job, go faster? Any thoughts on that? Thank you, Krista. That's great. Very long, but love it. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think, you know, you're going to have two types of leaders when it comes to organizations. And usually there's three top things that they have to pay attention on: is how much the work actually gets taken away, right? How much time they actually save. Does the team fit? You know, how does it fit the team that they already got? And how much time he actually gives back. So think, when it comes to this type of things, like think of Batman and Robin, right? You have, you know, if you have a leader that just see on move fast, move fast, move fast, and AI is like Robin, everything is brilliant, everything is enthusiastic, and sometimes it gets it really wrong. But realistically, you're the Batman. You're the one that's going to keep that judgment. You're going to the one that's going to, you know exactly what looks good and not willing to compromise. So I think experiment, you know, try different things, but it's not necessarily faster, right? If it's rubbish in, rubbish out, right? So unless you give it guidelines and unless you're the Batman to your Robin, it doesn't necessarily work. So I think putting the guidelines and ensuring with the team, you know, what are the things that we're gonna change? What are the things that we don't compromise at all? And where does human intervene and when does AI work? I think that those things together will give you better results.
Great. Amelia, have we accidentally kind of created these workplaces where looking confident has almost become more important than kind of asking questions? What's perspective on that?
I think it's possible in some settings. I wouldn't say across the board that's true, but I do think that AI creates this really interesting environment where, because speed is so much a part of the conversation, there is a concern sometimes about kind of raising your hand and asking a question, because it's like, I should have this figured out by now, or everybody else seems to be getting it and I don't. And I think there is a concern that people experience of, I don't want to clarify something that is not clear to me because I don't want to be perceived as less capable or uninformed or slow or behind the times. And that speaking up is really challenging, because from a neuroscience perspective, those kinds of risks of social threat are perceived as biological, like physical threats. And we have to overcome this real biological challenge of, I'm going to put myself out there and risk something that has some social weight to it that is a little bit different from what we've experienced in the past. I think like this speed component is somewhat new. I mean, we've been kind of on this uptick for a while of things are just getting faster. But I think we've seen from graphs and charts that like the rate of adoption and the rate of change that AI has introduced is really different.
Yeah, great. Right, let's turn all of this into something people can actually use. We talked a lot about the problem, sort of setting the scene, and we talked about kind of why it all happened. So if I'm a leader watching this today, what's one or maybe two things I could start doing literally tomorrow that would generally help close this expectation gap without lowering the bar? I think that's the important thing here. So who wants to kick that one off first?
I'll go. So there's a few things, right? I think, and I always tell this to my customers: drive curiosity, drive experimentation. This is key to anything being successful or people being scared of asking questions. When you drive the right culture, people will come and ask questions, will come and experiment. And then, for leaders, how do they close that gap without lowering the bar? Really is like, let's define as a team where AI should help, where does the human judgment still has the lead, right? And then what we don't compromise, and whatever the pressure it is, right? When someone pushes back on a timeline, it's not necessarily a resistance, is there's something more valuable that we need to do this week. Like and again, what does that good look like? I think that's the kind of set the bar, and if you have a success, don't stop at it. Keep going. What's the next thing that we're going to be successful at? And the next thing and the next thing. There will always be a flow that it should take with you. Like I always say, this new AI era is very, for those of us that are young enough to have been through the digital transformation era, right? Digital transformation, you stick a piece of SaaS solution and you kind of work the same way and off you go. This is different. This is personal and change the way that we work, that we think, the way that we show up, and mindsets. So I think the leader needs to be able to drive that in order to fill those gaps and not compromise with anything.
Correct. Amelia, any thoughts?
Yeah, picking up on some of what Juliana said, I think everyone needs to know what North is. The team should be aligned on, here's our goal, here's what we're trying to achieve as a team, and see AI as a tool to point north. AI is not north for most teams. The point is not the tool itself. The point is something that the team is aligned on and something that the team knows that the group is working toward, and AI is a means to get there. And creating clarity and transparency around what that north is will go a long way. I think the other thing that I would add is really remembering that there is a difference between challenge and threat. The goal is not to eliminate challenge. Like, challenge is where growth comes from. It should be a little hard. Transformation is always a little hard. It's always a little uncomfortable. But when it crosses that threshold to be threatening or unpredictable or unclear, like if you no longer know what north is, and suddenly the challenge is the lack of clarity, the lack of transparency, and the lack of trust, then you have a different kind of problem. So know the difference between, I'm going to create a challenge that we are all aligned around and we are working toward and moving through, versus I'm creating an environment of uncertainty and threat. Knowing the difference between those two things and knowing what north is and moving toward north together. Those are the two things that I would say are really meaningful for this moment.
Love it. So we are, as usual, running out of time. So in our last episode, we did this quick fire round. So we're going to try it again. So up until this point, I've been asking nice open questions and you've had the luxury of giving thoughtful, considered answers. That's all over now. That's all over. This is quick fire. So I'm looking for short answers, no overthinking, just kind of the first thing that's on your mind. And this one's nice and simple because I'm going to start a sentence and I'd like you to finish it. But you're both going to finish it. So sometimes you're the first person at a slight disadvantage. Sometimes you're the second person. So, okay, so complete this sentence. So Amelia, I'm coming to you first.
Oh boy.
This week, leaders need to be much clearer about
why.
About why? Oh, God, that's a quick one. That was a quick one. I thought you were asking my question was why. Okay,
About
why?
what is your why as a team?
That's even short as far as letters as well as words. I like it. I like it. Juliana?
Giving them the standard and not the deadlines.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so Juliana, you first this time. So complete this sentence. Every employee should feel comfortable saying,
what do you want me to stop doing to make room for this?
beautiful. Love that. Love that. Amelia?
Oh, Juliana, you made that so hard to follow.
We can double down on that one. That's okay. If you
Yeah,
want to
I can't come up with a better answer than that.
It must be a good answer. It must go. And finally, Amelia, back to you. So AI is at its best when it helps us
work better with each other, not in place of each other.
Love it. Juliana?
Let us ask the questions that we are afraid of to build the confidence to go out to the team and say what we're thinking.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, that is all we have time for today. That's been fantastic. Amelia, Juliana, thank you both. You've been brilliant. And I'm pleased to report you've comfortably exceeded expectations, which given today's topic feels entirely appropriate. So well done. Thank you. And hopefully see you again soon. Cheerio. And thank you for joining us all today. Thanks for all your comments, your questions, for being part of the conversation. And as always, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Maybe the biggest question for leaders isn't how can we get people to do more? Maybe it's how can we create an environment where people feel more comfortable telling us what's really possible? Because if today's conversation has shown us anything, it's that closing the expectations gap isn't about lowering ambition. It's about raising clarity and building the kind of trust that gives people the confidence to speak up before small problems become big ones. After all, AI can improve performance, process can improve efficiency, but trust is what improves decisions. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you had a good time. Goodbye.